Hi everyone, this is Sina, and today we're going to talk about why typical diesel engine redline is much lower than typical petrol one, a question which requires digging the core of combustion concepts used by both engines to be answered. So most typical diesel engine uh, have redlines around 3000 RPM to 2500 RPMs, but typical gasoline engines or petrol ones Uh, they can operate at red lines around 6,000 RPM to all the way to 8,000 RPM. Now, even in racing category, we have gasoline engines operating at well over 13,000 RPM. Even in Formula One, we had engines operating at around 20,000 RPM. And in diesel racing, uh, like those used in LMAP, I think so. I don't remember the category name exactly, but those used in Le Mans, uh, those diesel engines had redline around 7,000 RPM, but that's its utmost limit. We don't have typical diesel engines running at higher RPM. We're gonna find the answer for this one in this presentation. We're going to talk about that, why this happens, and for that to be answered, you need to dig into the core of combustion concepts used by both engines. As you can see, this is a typical torque curve of a diesel engine. You can see that at 3000 RPM, the torque starts to decrease a lot, and that's technically the red line here. But in a typical gasoline engine, we have that torque reduction happening at around 6,000 RPM, so twice that much. So first of all, we need to know the applications of each. Diesel engine can be used in passenger cars, commercial vehicles, heavy-duty applications, agricultural, industrial machines, construction machines, marine engines, and generator, whereas gasoline is mostly used in passenger cars and small-size commercial vehicles, small-size generators, and small-size equipments like chainsaws. They have different applications, but in passenger car they can share that. We also need to look at fuels general characteristics of both of them, gasoline and diesel. So equivalent chemical formula for gasoline is C7H17. So as you know, gasoline and both gasoline and diesel, when you are buying it at a pump station, actually are containing a lot of chemical components, well over probably 100 different components. So when you add them together and average them together, you get for gasoline something like C7H17, and for diesel something like C14H25. Their lower heating value, this is very similar between both fuels, like both gasoline and diesel have almost the exact lower heating value. It means if you burn 1 kg of gasoline or diesel, you're gonna get around 40 megajoules of energy. Their flame temperature also is quite identical, both playing around 2300 kelvins at 1 bar and on-burn temperature of 2980 Kelvin with a constant pressure system. Laminar flame speed of diesel is twice as gasoline. The cetane number of diesel is very high, but gasoline is low. On the other hand, the octane number of gasoline is much higher than diesel. And its auto ignition temperature of gasoline is higher than diesel. And regarding volatility, gasoline is higher than diesel. So the main difference between gasoline and diesel is regarding these parts: flame speed, octane and cetane numbers, auto ignition temperature, and volatility. And because of that, you get different combustion characteristics. You have to use two different combustion concepts for these two fuels, and we're going to talk about that. So combustion images of both, we have here a diesel engine, uh, the combustion of a diesel engine without swirl flow. But if you add swirl, these combustion jets get a little bit distorted, like this one here. So we have different fuel jets and different combustion jets. But in a gasoline engine or petrol engines, the combustion happens in a way that's it's a propagating flame. So after the spark ignition, that flame starts to develop and it propagates into the unburned zone until it burns everything. So basically, we have a wave front, a flame front, propagating inside the chamber. I think this video cannot be played. Fortunately, this is a 3D CFD simulation of a petrol engine during compression and combustion event. It's coming from a large eddy simulation done by University of ETH in Zurich, but unfortunately I cannot play it here. I don't know why. Moving on to the next slide. We have here the petrol combustion in a cycle. So during the intake, you have both intake air and also the injection plus evaporation and mixing happens here. During compression stroke, you might have injection if you are using a GDI engine operating with stratified strategy, and still you're gonna have some evaporation and mixing happening. So during the ignition, you have a premixed mixture. It means that fuel and air are completely mixed together, almost homogeneous in PFI engines, port fuel injection engines, and in GDI engines operating with stratified strategy. You still get a premixed mixture, but at different locations you get different mixture strength. So during ignition, you have a premixed mixture. So ignition happens, and a flame kernel will start to develop between these spark plug electrodes. And that flame kernel, it starts to propagate with a laminar flame speed. Which is very low. So around at those cylinder pressure and temperature, it's around 1 to 2 meters per second. But after some time, that flame kernel develops and its size gets bigger, and it gets big enough that turbulence, the cylinder turbulence, can affect it. And we get a early flame thickening, and after that we get a fully developed turbulent flame thick brush, a structure like this one. So this is the flame front. It gets wrinkled a lot, its area will increase, and the burn rate also increases proportional to turbulence intensity. And after that, it propagates into the unburned mixture with a speed relative to turbulence levels. So in general, we get a flame speed of around 10, 20 to 70 meters per second, depending on engine RPM and engine load. And then after some time, the flame front will reach the cylinder walls, and it starts to quench. And after that, you get to exhaust, and the product of that reaction will be exhausted from the cylinder, and then you start again by intake, injection, evaporating, and again ignition, combustion, quenching, exhaust, and again, discretes. Now in this graph here, we have the burn rate, which is implied by Joule per crank angle, which is technically this is the energy release rate, heat release rate, or HRR, they call it in articles and papers. So we get a typical shape of like this one, a one spike shape, just one spike. Now these it belongs to different concepts of combustion in gasoline engines. This one belongs to a stratified engine. These two here, and also these two, they belong to typical PFI engines or direct injection engines operating with homogeneous mixture. And this huge spike here, as you can see, this belongs to a HCCI engine, I think. So in HCCI engine or RCCI engines, we get still premixed combustion, but much faster. So because of that, you get a higher peak burn rate and heat release rate. We're not going to talk about that in this session. So as I said, you get a structure like this one, which the flame is wrinkled because of turbulence, but the combustion itself happens within these thin layers here. This is where actually the reaction is taking place. The purpose of turbulence, the effect of turbulence is to increase wrinkling, and by increased wrinkling, you get a higher flame area, and by that you get higher burning rate. So imagine if there were no wrinkles, only this line would show the flame front, and definitely this dashed line here has much lower length than these wrinkles here. So because of that, the area of the flame increases because of turbulence, and you get higher burn rate. But if we zoom in this thin layer part here where reaction is taking place, these parts advance into the unburned mixture with a speed called laminar burning speed. So when you zoom into that, you get a structure like this one where you have unburned part here, and this is the burned part. We have a thin layer called the reaction zone. This is where actually the main parts of the reactions are taking place. Huge amount of fuel is being released here, and you have a conduction and preheat zone before that. This is where those elementary and intermediate reactions are taking place, liberating some limited amount of fuel's energy and producing intermediate products. So because of that, temperature will rise. Also, we have temperature conduction from the reaction zone to these parts. So because of that, temperature also goes up. So turbulence inside the cylinder has different characteristic lengths. We have different eddies with different sizes. We have large eddies, medium-sized eddies, and also very small eddies. The smallest eddy size are still larger than reaction zone thickness, and because of that, they cannot affect reaction kinetics inside the reaction zone. So turbulence can increase heat and radical transfer from burn zone to conduction zone and preheat zone, resulting in faster flame speed and more flame wrinkling and stretching. And turbulence fortunately scales well with RPM inside gasoline engines, and because of that, at higher RPMs you still get higher flame speed, and because of that you can operate that engine at higher RPMs because it scales with RPM. So conventional gasoline engine flame speed is around 10 to 17 meters per second. The laminar flame speed is around 0.3 to almost 1 or 2 meters per second. So the turbulence share is that total flame speed minus laminar flame speed. So the turbulence share is much higher. Okay, now we get to diesel engine combustion. This one can be played. This is a diesel spray recorded at 10,000 frame per second. You can see the sources here. I'm gonna play it just to see it. So this is how diesel combustion happens. If I show it to you, at first you have the injection, of course, and after some delay, the combustion starts to happen. Now, as you can see, this is the flame and propagates completely. And you can see there's a rotation into it. If you pay attention enough, you can see that rotation. This is because swirl. Now diesel engines operate with a lot of swirl, but gasoline engines operate with tumble flow. We're going to talk about that in another video, why that happened, why diesel engines operate with swirl, and why gasoline engines operate with tumble. So this is diesel combustion. Now, if we want to talk about what's happening during diesel combustion, but first, again, we have the intake stroke, which only air is coming inside the cylinder, and then we have compression, still no fuel, and then just some time before top dead center, we start to inject fuel inside the cylinder. So in this graph here, we have the combustion heat release rate, this thick line here, and before that, around 11 degrees before top dead center, we have the start of injection. So this thin line here shows the needle lift, the injector needle lift. So at 11 degrees before top dead center, we have the start of injection, and after some time, after some delay, the combustion starts to take place. And if you notice, we have two distinguished spikes compared to gasoline when we just had one spike. But in diesel engines, we have two distinguishable heat release rate spikes and peaks. I'm going to talk about that, why this happened. So after the injection, right after the injection, evaporation of that fuel starts to happen, the mixing with air happens, and we get ignition delay. So when that fuel is injected inside a cylinder, because there is a huge amount of pressure difference between the injector rail and cylinder pressure, that fuel jet is carrying a lot of momentum, and it starts to penetrate inside the cylinder, inside the combustion chamber, and because of that difference of velocity between that fuel jet and the surrounding air, a shear force, there will be a huge amount of shear force, and because of that, air will be entrained inside that inside that jet. So you have a jet moving at relatively high speed, and the air around it will be pushed inside that fuel jet, and because of that, evaporation and mixing will start to happen. And at the tip of the fuel jet, you get a mixture of fuel and air, which is hot, because that air which was surrounding that fuel jet was hot, because the diesel engines are operating with compression ratios of around 18 to 24. So the air around the fuel jets have temperatures above 1000 degrees of Kelvin. And because the tip part of the fuel jet is a well mixed fuel and air which is hot, some elementary and intermediate reaction starts to happen, creating a huge chemical radical pool. And because diesel fuel has a very low octane number, it auto ignites so fast. So after some delay, the tip of the jet auto ignites, and it will create a premix combustion just like gasoline was, but it's so much fast because all of those fuel and air at the tip of the fuel jet immediately starts to auto-ignite and release their energy, and hence this first spike here. And after that, this premix combustion is not a complete combustion because the mixture strength is very rich. You get a lot of COs and different hydrocarbons and soot. The product of this premix combustion will go further, go to near the edge of the fuel jet, and they get mixed with the surrounding air again, and the combustion changes to a different combustion concept called diffusion flame, in which the fuel and air are completely separated, because you have air here, completely air, and this part is your premix combustion product. So they are kept separately. Because of that, we call it diffusion flame. So they get burned again, rising the temperature level and completing the combustion, and leaving only carbon dioxide and water vapor. So after that, we still have diffusion flame and late combustion events, and after that, we get to exhaust, and again this cycle. Now you can see it in this video better. This is still, and this is again a largely simulation of spray combustion, which is done in octane foam. Let me play it for you to see it. Okay, so here it goes. So as you can see, this is the ambient condition. Ambient means surrounding the fuel jet. Temperature is 900 Kelvin, and we have 50% oxygen. The fuel spray itself is coming with a temperature of around 360 Kelvin with around 1,500 bar pressure and speed of 600 meters per second. So this fuel jet is coming with initial velocity of 600 meters per second. So it's penetrating inside the cylinder. Now this is temperature. So this is the fuel spray, which has much lower temperature compared to the surrounding, and it mixes with air. The air is entrained inside these inside the jet, increasing the fuel spray and fuel temperature. And after some delay, we get those intermediate reactions which are seeing increased temperature. This is because the premixed part. So this is still the premixed part. That first spike we saw in previous figures. This is the premixed part combustion. And then the product. Sorry. And then the product of that premixed combustion start to shit. Let me play it again. So this is the mixing part, increased fuel spray temperature, and that's the elementary reactions, intermediate reactions, auto ignition part, and the premixed combustion, and we get the diffusion flame at the tip of the fuel jet, combustion jet, sorry. This is the diffusion flame part. This yellowish color here, this represent the diffusion flame part, the completion of the combustion event, and it goes like this. Now in this slide we have 3 different pictures. We're going to discuss it. So as I said, the combustion does not happen in one step. It has multiple steps. At first we have the fuel and oxygen, but at first they're going to decompose into smaller hydrocarbons, releasing some chemical radicals, and then creating different hydrocarbons. And again, this goes on until at the end we get carbon dioxide, H2O. And you can see the temperature starts to rise. So this is the multi-step nature of combustion, whether it's diesel or gasoline, they all happen in this way. They are multi-step. And this is a typical diesel jet. So we have liquid fuel being introduced inside a cylinder at relatively low temperature levels, but the surrounding air is much higher, much hotter, and because of that velocity difference between the jet and the surrounding air, some eddies will be formed in training the air inside the jet, and they mix together, the fuel will evaporate, and those elementary and intermediate reactions start to happen, creating those radical chemical radicals, and then preparing the that mixture for the premixed combustion or the auto emission part. And then the temperature will rise to around 1600 Kelvin, which we have the premixed combustion products and also soot. And then those will come to the tip of the jet, and they will mix with the air again, and the reaction will become complete. So at the premix part, we're probably around here, and then for the diffusion part at the tip of the combustion jet, this is the rest of the combustion reactions. So the premixed part belongs to somewhere here, and then the diffusion part belongs to here. Now in this picture, this one is also interesting. The y-axis shows local equivalence ratio, and the x-axis shows local temperature. Now if we follow a fuel particle inside a diesel engine, we get a graph like this one. So after the injection, that fuel is mixing with air, so its local equivalence ratio starts to decrease. And when it decreases and mixed with air, and after those ignition delay and chemical radicals starting to form, the auto emission kicks in, and we get that premixed burning, increasing the temperature by a lot. And we get to an area where soot is formed because we have a rich mixture. And then the mixing control or the diffusion flame starts to happen, increasing the flame temperature much higher, around 2500 Kelvin degrees. This is where NOx formation happens. And after that, because the piston is moving down, the flame starts to cool down, the gas temperature starts to cool down, and also we are getting leaner. And at this location also, the soot that was formed during the premixed burning will start to oxidize. Not all of it will oxidize, but some huge parts of it will oxidize, but still there will be some soot left. So let me get back to that graph just to show you something. Okay, so this premixed part, as we said, which is a huge spike in heat release rate, this will result in a very sharp increase in cylinder pressure. So the cylinder pressure changing rate, like what I mean is that because of that premixed part, which gets a huge peak in heat release rate, the cylinder pressure will rise in a very short time, and that will create a distinguishable sound which belongs to diesel engine. Because of that, diesel engine sound is more different than gasoline ones. We call that a combustion, and that's not good. The designers want to reduce that. Also, the premixed part is responsible for NOx formation, soot formation. We don't want that, and also uh, NOx formation. So the designer want lower premix share. They don't want this huge spike. They want to decrease the spike, um, and because of that, they uh, do some different injection strategies. We're going to talk about them. So most modern diesel engines, they don't operate with just one single injection event. They operate with more than two or three injection events. So if we take the extreme case, we can have 7 to 9 times of injection events in one engine cycle. We can have up to 3 pilot injection, and right before the main injection event we can have a pre-injection event, and then we have the main injection event, and just right after it we can have an after injection, and sometimes after that we can also have a post-injection. All of them happen for different reasons. We call this rate shaping in diesel engines. So let's talk about them individually. The pilot injection, this is because it can reduce NOx and combustion noise. How? So when you pilot inject the fuel inside a cylinder before the main injection event, you actually increase the gas temperature within the cylinder, because the injected fuel during the pilot injection, they'll slowly start to react with the air inside the cylinder, releasing their energy so they can increase the gas temperature inside the cylinder. And because of that, when the main injection happens, the ignition delay starts to decrease by a lot. So when the fuel is injected during the main event, because now you have a higher cylinder temperature level, the main injection fuel will react much faster. So a smaller portion of that fuel undergoes the first premixed part. So both NOx and combustion noise starts to decrease. So for the pilot injection, they can use multiple injection for lowering the wall width. So when you inject the whole pilot portion in one injection event, you get a longer spray penetration levels. So these can actually hit the wall, impinge on them, thus creating HC and CO emissions. So you make them so you can actually break it into 2 or 3 sequential injection events, decreasing the spray penetration. What about pre-injection? By pre-injection, they mean just a small interval before the main injection. This can reduce combustion noise and ignition delay, thus also NOx. This happened through chain branching and radical generation. So the pre-injection, it happened just before the main injection, so it does not have enough time to combust actually. It will only undergo the intermediate reactions and elementary reactions, liberating some chemical radicals, preparing the state for the main injection to undergo the premixed part much faster. So the premixed part share will decrease, thus in combustion noise and also NOx generation. The main injection event, this is the main source of power. This is the main portion of the fuel you wanted for torque and power generation. The after injection, this will happen uh, when still the combustion is happening. Actually, yes, the main injection part is done, but still the combustion is happening. And when you inject fuel again, this will cause the diffusion flame part to prolong, and the formed soot during the premix part actually to burn much more. So with this, after uh, injection, you increase soot burnup, and because of that, you get lower soot levels inside the cylinder. The post-injection, this happens long time after the main injection event. This is for exhaust after treatment reasons, like increasing the gas temperature during the exhaust stroke, so those catalytic converters heat up faster and get to their working temperature faster and start to decrease the combustion emissions. So these are the main reasons why we have different injection events inside modern diesel engines. So let's get back to our main question, which was why diesel engines have red lines much lower than gasoline one. So let's just say we want to extend the red line in a diesel engine. Let's just say we want to extend the red line from 3000 to 7000. How are we going to do that? We're going to do that with two different phenomena. The first one being increasing turbulence inside the cylinder or increasing evaporation rate. So in diesel engine, the combustion speed, the burn rate, is controlled through turbulence and evaporation rate or mixing rate. So you have fuel being injected inside the cylinder during late compression stroke. If you increase the evaporation and mixing rate, you can get a higher amount of a higher crank angle for your main combustion event. But if you are not able to increase that at high RPMs, you're gonna end up with a prolonged combustion. So when your combustion is prolonged, you get lower efficiency because you are doing it in higher cylinder volumes. And because of that, you get lower torque, you get lower power. So you have to find a way to increase both evaporation and mixing rate and also turbulence around the injector tip to increase the flame speed. So how are we going to do that? Combustion chamber design can influence turbulence level inside the diesel engine combustion chamber, intake port design, and multiple injection. The intake port design, you can use intake port design to increase swirl generation, but something with swirl is when you increase swirl at some higher levels, going to decrease the volumetric efficiency of that cylinder. Thus, you get a lower torque power. For evaporation rate, you're gonna get an increased injection pressure, but this has a saturation effect after, for example, 2000 bar. From, for example, 1000 bar to 2000 bar, you're gonna get a huge increase in evaporation rate. But at 2000 RPM to, for example, 2500 bar, you're not gonna get much more evaporation rate. It's gonna saturate. You can enhance the injector hole design or use vibrating injector tips, but they all saturate and you cannot increase evaporation rate at a certain level. It stops, and because of that, as the RPM goes up, you're going to end up with a similar evaporation rate, and because of that, you get a prolonged combustion and lower efficiency combustion, and hence lower torque and power. So after 3000 RPM, for example, you're going to get a huge reduction in your power and torque. So that's where your red line is going to be. But in gasoline engines, this does not happen because turbulence scales will with RPM, and since you're using a premixed mixture, which the mixing started well before the combustion, even during the intake and compression, it's happening. You get always a premixed mixture ready to be combusted. So that's the main reason. And yeah, that's it. That sums it up. Thank you for watching this video. If you have any question, uh, I'll be happy to answer them. Please subscribe and share these videos to others so the channel can grow. And also sorry for some technical issues during the presentation. Hope you like it. Thank you. Have a good day. Bye.